Are you ready to take your fashion design skills to a technical level? If so, you might want to start by using a vector-based software to digitally sketch your flat garment sketches. We're going to be going through how to utilize the Fashion Design Book or the Curvy Fashion Design Book with Adobe Illustrator. Now, this is not a very basic tutorial on how to use Illustrator. It assumes that you already have some knowledge in utilizing the program. I'm going to be using a lot of the different functions of the toolbars, and I do expect that you know how to use some of these features. So if you have absolutely no clue about how to use Illustrator, I do recommend that you find a video that shows you the basic functionality steps. The Illustrator version of the book includes the entire library of silhouettes and style details found in the printed version of the book. Get ready to transform those ideas and designs and get them out into the world. We'll dive right in. Welcome to the digital version of the Fashion Design Book. Now, we have two versions of the book. We have the standard figure and we also have the Curvy edition figure. So regardless of what version you're using, the logic of this video and all of the other videos is the same regardless of which version you're using. All right, so if you haven't already set up your workspace in Adobe Illustrator, you can set it up to your liking, or you can also choose a standard workspace. So if we go to Window and we go to Workspace, we can choose Essentials, which will change the different types of toolbars that we have. We also have a great workspace, which is Essentials Classic, and I'm going to go ahead and switch to that one. That one is usually my favorite one. I have different options up here, color, stroke, all of these, and then I also have other options up here of text. If you're not seeing any of the toolbars here that I have, you can also go to Windows and you can select the different toolbars that you want. And you can also drag and move those to where you want them to go. So for example, if I want this one to move over, and I can also drag and move some of these over wherever I want them to go. So that's setting up your workspace. Let's go ahead and take a look at the document. We have first the croquis, then we have necklines and collars. You can see that I'm moving over in the page with my trackpad. I'm on a Mac, so I'm moving around with a trackpad. If you don't have a trackpad, you can also press the space bar and you'll get the hand, and you can drag by clicking and moving around. So we can see we have sleeves, we have the bodices, we have the ruffles and fullness here. If we go down, we have tops, sweaters, cardigans, jackets, blazers, coats, dresses, and we keep moving down to see skirts, pants, jumpsuits, pockets, faces, and trims. So that's the entire document. Now, all of these images in here are individual, and most of them have been grouped together. What do we mean by grouped? Well, when we zoom in, I'm using my trackpad to zoom in. You can use a scrolling feature on your mouse to zoom in, or you could use the magnifier here to zoom in by clicking and going ahead. On my computer, the zoom out is the option key. On a PC, it may be another key. So what we mean by grouped, when we select a line with the black arrow, you can see that all of the other lines have been grouped together. If we want to ungroup the item, we right-click and we say ungroup. So now we can see every line is separate. So you'll notice that many of these sketches have been grouped together. We Control or Command G to group them back together, or we right-click to group them back together. So let's design our own style. First, we're going to select a neckline. Let's choose that cowl. We're right there. I'm going to select it and copy and paste it. Control C and Control V, or Command C, Command V. Copy and paste. Now let's choose a body, a silhouette from the body or a sleeve, whatever you want to go with, it's up to you. Let's go with a flared fit. I'm going to select that, Control C, Control V, copy paste or Command, and we're going to utilize this white space that we have to start drawing up our style. Now I can copy and paste that croquis as well. Control copy and V to get that croquis underneath her. Let's see how it's looking. I can also select these items behind it and bring it to the front or bring it to the back. Right click, arrange, bring to front. We're going to bring this to the front as well. And we can see that some of it is filled in with white because it's covering up some of that croquis. Now, many of these images are filled in with white, meaning the fill here is a solid white. So you can see some of that has filled in now. And we can always feel free to change that fill color as we want to work with the styles. I'm going to move this up a little bit. Get it a little bit shorter. And now I want to add a sleeve to it. I can add whatever sleeve I want. And the good thing about this is if I don't like it, I can always change it up. So we might try one sleeve and maybe it's not quite right. We have a pretty soft and flowing style, but we have a very heavy neckline. So we don't want to take away from that neckline because that's going to be our focal point here. Maybe we'll take something like this to kind of mimic that same shape as the silhouette of the body. So you can see here, I just selected something and it's not grouped. So another option to group those items would be making a rubber box. That means dragging that box over, selecting everything. I'm going to deselect the arms by pressing the Shift key, selecting, clicking on the arms, so that's deselected it, and then I'm going to group. So I'm going to copy that and come back up to my image here and paste. So we can see those are pretty long sleeves compared to the rest of the body, but I'm okay with that actually. Maybe we can shorten it up a little bit. Since it's quite a full sleeve, we can shorten it up like that. Now I'm going to pull away the croquis behind it and move it out of the way to visualize it. Not quite digging that so much. I think it's a bit too bold with that fullness. So I could change it up and reduce some of that fullness if I wanted. Right click, ungroup. And I generally work on one side and perfect that side before I change it up. So I've switched over to the white cursor here. That white cursor has a shortcut of A. The black cursor has a shortcut of V. If you hover over those buttons, it shows what the cursor shortcut is. So I'm going to go to my A, which adjusts the shape of the style. And I can adjust the positions of those points by selecting it and moving it. I can remove some of the points by selecting the minus sign on my keyboard. That removes some of the points. But you have to be careful to make sure you're trying to remove the one that you want. So that's selecting this line. I actually want to select the other line. So I'm going back to my A cursor, and then I'm going to minus remove some of these. Just want to shorten it up and reduce some of this fullness in here. And we can kind of play around with some of that until we get it to look how we want it to. And we're moving these little lines here. So of course, this tutorial expects that you know a little bit of Illustrator. It's not a beginner, but we're using these little legs to adjust the shapes of those lines. And we're moving the points to get it to where we want it to go. So that's looking a little bit nicer to me, but it's still quite full. So I think we're gonna just reduce a little bit here, maybe reduce this shape here, moving it around until we're happy basically. So I'm kind of undoing, redoing, checking it out, see what I like. If you want to go edit, undo, you can undo move by Control or Command Z. And then we can redo that move as well with shortcuts. So as you get better with Illustrator, you're definitely going to want to use those shortcuts. This is really critical. And we can now shorten up all of these points by doing a rubber box with the white cursor. We're grabbing all of those things and we're reducing up that length a bit. So that's looking a little bit nicer. I want to go ahead and extend the length of this a little bit. And now we're looking a little better here. I'm going to delete this one and remove all this. Let's get that croquis back underneath there. So you can see I'm flipping through these constantly with my shortcuts, utilizing the V and utilizing the A. So you can see this is looking good for the length. It's looking good for the length of the sleeve here, the body. Going back to my croquis away from it. And then I can see I have some differences in my line thicknesses. So if I select this line and look over here at my weight, I have a 2-point line versus this one, I have a 1-point line. And these lines are very harsh lines here. So you're going to notice that throughout this book, I've tried to make it as consistent as possible. But there have been 5 different artists working on this book, and it is so difficult to get consistency when we have different ways of working. And for you, you're going to have to figure out what the best method is for you to work. So for me, I really like to utilize the profile shape in my lines. So I can play around with the different lines, and you can see that just gives us a much softer look here. That's in the profile section here. Now, one of the things when we're playing around with those lines is that we often want to close up our lines. We can see that we have one sleeve that's separate from the body, and we often want to close up our lines so that we can use the coloration process later. Maybe we want to color up that whole style in red, but you can see we can't really get a full red here. So let's cancel that up. We're going to be closing up our lines at the very end of this process. So first I'm going to copy and paste this and reflect. So I'm right-clicking, transform, reflect here, and we're moving that around. We're going to send this to the back, arrange, send to back here so that the collar comes to the front. And this we could also possibly send to the back as well. So let's talk about closing up our lines. So we have this line, it's separate from this line, and this is also separate. So every designer works differently in this process of closing up lines and joining them at the end. I could do it several different ways. I could close up my body to be one continuous line, and then I could have my sleeves closed, and that would be one option. Or we could close up the entire outside selection of the garment and have that closed. So we want to close up those paths. Before I do that, I want to do a quick check of my croquis underneath to see how those sleeves are looking. Are they even? This one is looking a little bit lower. So I'm pressing the shift key down to hold all of those lines together to move them up. Then I use the arrows on my keyboard to move the item up or down. So just get it in the right place here. And we can see that we have some fill lines on some of these lines here because we can see this white coming through. So that is probably on the main line here. Yep, that main line has a white fill here. So let's close up those paths so that we could color up this in different colorways. If we don't close up those lines, then we have fills on everything separately. So I'm going to go ahead and look at the outside silhouette of my garment. Now, some people like to work with a shape behind this entire garment, and they'll fill in that shape. So they utilize all of the lines of the silhouette and create its own shape behind the whole garment. So that would definitely be an option to do. Or you can utilize the shapes with the black lines. Now, since these lines are all separate here, I'm going to go ahead and work with creating a silhouette line of the entire garment separately. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste the whole thing. I'm selecting all of it, copy, paste, and now I'm going to be joining in all of the outside lines. I'm going to be deleting any internal lines for this process. Okay, so we're deleting everything internally. We're leaving all the external lines. And I'm using this white arrow to delete any lines and delete any points that I don't want, but keeping this outer edge. Can even leave that one in there. We're going to delete this, and we're going to delete all of these internal lines here. So now you can see I'm left with a silhouette basically, and now I want to join up all these lines. So I'm going to highlight these lines, right click and say join, but I'm only selecting the points with the rubber box of the white arrow selection tool, join. And this is kind of the easiest way when you have lots of internal lines that are not connected. Now I want to go ahead and make this no fill so that I can see this internal line, and we can go ahead and join these two lines. Now it's not joining it, and it did not throw an error. That's because I'm not selecting the very last point. I need to select the very last point and join. So that's joining it. Then I could also move this over to be on the same line. That was my sleeve. Same thing here. You can see that point here, select, holding that shift key down, selecting those points and joining them. All right, we're going to join these together. And you can see when we do this, we're often getting a different line shape. That's because it's not a static line, it's an adjustable line. Join all of these. If it's not joining it, it's because you probably didn't select the last point. We're going to move this one over. I want to only move the points over, just like that. Playing with those legs, getting it to look nice. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move this up a little bit here. All right, so I have my outer silhouette and it's all joined together now. If I select the V, you're going to see it all joined together. If I select the A, you're also going to see it all joined together. Now I can go through and fill and change the fill to whatever color I want. Let's say I want a red fill. Now, if I want 0 lines on the outside edges, I can select that line tool and go none. So now I have colored up my style. I can put this behind my other style, and you can see those silhouette lines are matching up pretty well, and I can right click, arrange, send to back, and we have to go with no fill for all the rest. So here I've selected my sleeve, I'm going to the fill here, and I'm going to none. Same thing over here, none. Every single little item, I have to go none for the fill. Sometimes if they're grouped together, they don't like to go to none. So that's definitely sometimes an issue. So we have a little bit of white space showing up right here. Something is showing up as a white fill in there. Can't quite figure out what it is. So that's my underneath line over here. All right, so we have a little bit of overlap here. This often happens with this method, that we have some overlaps. We can play around with sending things to the back, but we have to remember that we also have to send that red layer to the back. So we're selecting the shift, selecting that red layer, arrange and send to back. Okay, that didn't quite work. All right, so we're going to play around with those lines until we're happy with those placements. We're going to move that armhole to match, play around with those lines until we're happy, getting something similar. And we can always copy and paste from one side to the other. Now, let's say I want to mimic this outer line here. I can go plus that's adding a pen point to it, and A is moving that. So we can just kind of mimic those lines there. You know I'm moving fast, but this is not a beginner course. If you need a beginner course, you're definitely going to want to look one of those up. This is assuming that you already have a little bit of experience with Illustrator. I'm going to go minus to erase some of those points in there just to kind of clean it up a little bit and make it look a little bit better. All right, so we have designed our first style. And if you don't like it, the best thing about this is you can switch up those styles and those designs as you wish with any other sleeves, necklines, or tops. You'll use that same exact concept for pants as well, skirts and dresses too. I want you to have a lot of fun with this project. It is so much fun to design with Adobe Illustrator. I think you're really going to enjoy it. So once again, every designer works differently. So as you work more with the file, you're going to find what suits your liking as far as grouping goes, or as far as line aesthetics, things like that, closing up those paths. You can see every single designer has closed up different paths, and I've tried to go through and clean it up as best as I can for my liking. But I would say a lot of the times I've also left it as other illustrators have used this file. One other thing you're going to notice in this file is that we have a layers section. All of these layers are marked with different types of items within the file. However, these are primarily used for guidelines. So you'll see many different guidelines used in here, and that's for aligning those different styles for the pages. All of the actual sketches here are on layer 1. Feel free to move those sketches onto different layers if you'd like. All right, I really hope you've enjoyed this tutorial. Have a lot of fun with it. Get creative and have fun mixing and matching with the fashion design book. When I first started in fashion design, I had no idea how to use vector-based drawing programs. The bottom line is, the more you practice, the better you get. Drawing digitally and manually is a skill that you're going to be using throughout your fashion career. In case you don't have the fashion design book as an Adobe Illustrator file format, you can click the link in the description below. The printed book is found on most online book retail stores, including Amazon. And I'll add a link to that in the description below too. I'm Gina Renee, and I teach online pattern making and design courses so that you can design and sew clothes you love that fit. If you've enjoyed today's video, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.